End of year is a great time to be thinking about what your volume is going to look like and to make sure that you're prepared, and also to make sure that any vendors that you work with are prepared. One thing I have seen come up with organizations, especially smaller organizations, is that some payment processors have daily volume limits based on how much money you typically process on a day. So when you have a big fundraising day like end of year, and that number hopefully is much, much higher, that can be a problem for some payment processors. It's possible that you could run into a limit that you didn't even know existed. So end of year is a great time to check in with your vendors and make sure that you don't have any kind of daily limits on your account that are going to be a problem at end of year. It's also a good time to take a look at things like the fraud protection settings on your forms. There's things like address verification and CVV that obviously can help prevent fraud, which can be a problem at end of year, but they can also occasionally stop legitimate transactions if they're not tuned correctly. So it's a good time to check in, make sure that your settings are what you want them to be. That's something that your vendors can often help with as well. For example, at EveryAction, we work with an industry-leading fraud protection vendor to dynamically adjust fraud settings to make sure that we're both blocking that fraud and not blocking any legitimate donors. So it's a good time to check in on settings like that on your forms and just make sure everything is what you want it to be. You obviously don't want a technical issue to interfere with the great fundraising day that you're hopefully having. Another thing I'd recommend in terms of checking with your vendors and payment processing for end of year is to look into any payment methods you might be able to add to your form. Often the existing payment vendors that you're working with have additional payment methods that you can add. For example, we work with a payment provider who supports credit cards, ACH, and Apple Pay. So you might be able to add an additional payment method without actually having to sign a new contract with a new vendor. And obviously at end of year, when you have more attention and more donors, you just want to be as flexible as possible and make sure that those donors can give in whatever way feels most comfortable to them. So that's a nice additional thing you can do for end of year to try and make your donors feel more comfortable on your forms.